Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our Peace Talk for Fiddler on the Roof. We are so fortunate today to be joined by cast member Yarden Barr. Yarden, tell us about the role that you play in the show. Tell us about yourself. Let's just start there, and then we'll kick off our conversation.
Sure. So I'm playing Chava, who is the middle daughter of Tevye's 5 daughters, Tevye being the main character of Fiddler. And Chava is the youngest of the 3 daughters who sing Matchmaker, the daughters that there kind of follows their story throughout the show. I forgot the rest of the question. Just talk about
so no, that's great. So we know who you play in the show, but I'm curious just about who you are in general. What are some other favorite roles that you play? I know that musical theater was something you discovered later in life than many folks who have become performers. So I'm curious just about that journey as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I actually started doing musical theater my freshman year of high school. I happened to see a friend of mine performing in a production of Legally Blonde, and for some reason I never knew that people my age at the time did stuff like that. And I said, I want to do that. That looks amazing. And since then I worked throughout high school to work on my skills and got a lot of training. I went to the Hart School and I majored in musical theater for college. Just before this, I played another dream role. Fiddler on the Roof was a dream show for me for such a long time. And I'm really lucky that right before this, I got to do another dream role, which was Belle in Beauty and the Beast. And I did that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I did that at a theater called Area Stage Company in Miami, Florida. And then while I was there, I found out that I booked this show. So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, no kidding. So I wonder, when were you, if you weren't a fan or weren't a student of musical theater until high school, when did you first encounter Fiddler, and what do you think it is that made it a dream role for you? What made you so in love with this character?
I don't remember exactly when I discovered Fiddler. It was probably around high school at some point. It could have been middle school that I'd heard of it because I did theater class in middle school. I just didn't know musical theater very well, just a couple of musicals. But in high school, I was part of this pre-college program at a theater outside of school where I just took a lot of classes and learned a lot about theater history and a lot of just skills and knowledge about the industry and the craft as a whole. And I did a project on Fiddler once, so I watched the movie and I listened to a lot of cast recordings of different versions. And at the time, or maybe slightly after, was when this Fiddler revival was on Broadway. And I watched all of the backstage vlogs that Broadway World did, that Adam Cantor was filming. And I fell in love with this version, the Bartlett Sher version of the show. And honestly, I didn't have a dream role within the show. I just loved the show so much that I just wanted to be in it. I would have done anything. I would have stood in a corner just to be part of it.
Well, was there anything in particular, thematically, something about the story? What is it that jumps out at you, do you think, and sets Fiddler apart from maybe another show?
Yeah, for me, it's the joy. This show is filled with such joy. That's just the word I always come back to when I think about it and when I discuss it. And it's so at contrast with a lot of the tragedy that also happens in the show that I think the fact that there's just the contrast of joy and sadness and happy occasions and really sad ones it's just so human.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Sunrise, sunset, right there. You have that.
Yeah.
There it is. I love that. Talking about the contrast, the old with the new, the young with the, I love that. That's a great way to put it. So you mentioned the 2016, this is the Bartlett Sher production that's going to be coming here to Greenville. That was the 6th Broadway revival of Fiddler on the Roof, which premiered on Broadway originally in 1964. So why is it that we keep telling this story again and again and again? There are certainly shows that get revived, but 6 times, that's got to be one of the most frequently revived shows. I wonder why we keep keep retelling it? What do you think?
I think it's a story that a lot of people can relate to. I remember when I was learning about Fiddler on the Roof in this pre-college program in high school, one of my teachers said that it's very popular internationally, and I think they said it was I don't remember what country they said, but I think maybe it was Japan, that it was extremely popular in Japan, and which is odd because it's a Jewish story and there are not many Jewish people living in Japan. But it's just such a human story that I think everyone can relate to it. Everyone can relate to feeling like they are stuck in something and want to grow, or everyone can feel like they are set in these old ways, and everyone can feel like there's people against them and wanting to, put them in a box, both in the context of the show, within the Jewish people and within the daughters who are trying to make their own way in life.
Yeah, and your character in particular, I love the arc of your character because she's one who really goes against the grain, right? She's groundbreaking. So maybe talk about just what a unique perspective on the world she has, given this family that she's grown up in.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason why she has her own perspective on the world is because she reads, and she doesn't discriminate on who the authors are or the subject material. She just wants to learn, and through learning she sees the world more openly than a lot of the other people in her community, because they're very much within the community, and her knowledge expands beyond the world that she originally is born into. So I think that leads her to Fiedka, who also is very much a learner and sees beyond his world. And I think that really brought them together.
And ultimately, she has a tremendous impact on her father, who learns to maybe see things from a different perspective too, just because of the way that she is, just because of what she's learned. So she's a hugely impactful character in the show, and I can't wait to see you play the role here in Greenville. Now, now, I want to talk about this production in particular. Like I said, it premiered on Broadway in 2016. It ran for just over a year, directed by Bartlett Sher. And some of the reviews of the show indicate that it's one of the most spectacular, beautiful productions of Fiddler that they've ever seen. And again, when you've had a show that's been revived on Broadway 5 times and in countless productions across the world put on by community and regional theater groups, that's saying something. So I wonder if you, who lives with this show day in and day out, can you tell us what makes it so beautiful and so spectacular? I mean, certainly Bartlett Sher is known for beautiful and spectacular productions, but specifically with regards to Fiddler, what is it that makes it so great?
Oh my gosh, I could say so many things.
Well, please do. We want to hear them all.
Bartlett Sher is an absolute genius, and I think when he has an idea, he really takes it and runs with it. And from what I've understood from his notes and from him speaking to us, he really wanted this to be relevant and to make an impact and to be in the now. And I haven't seen all the other Fiddler revivals, so I can't really speak to all their nuances. But our show starts with, well, maybe I shouldn't spoil it, but it starts with a contemporary man. It doesn't start with Pevya. It starts with a man wearing modern clothing and with his head uncovered. So it's not someone from Anatevka. It is today or sometime in the relative now. And that kind of theme of bringing it into the now, I think, is consistent throughout the show, of just, finding the timeliness of it and the relevance of it. And since the war has broken out in Ukraine, we've thought a lot about that and how it's happening all over again. It's the same story. So that's yeah, something we think about a lot here. Um, Another thing that I think is so beautiful about this version is our choreography. A lot of productions use the original Jerome Robbins choreography, which is also so beautiful. But we have choreography by the amazing Hofesh Shechter, who's an Israeli choreographer. And it's just, his work is absolutely so, so beautiful. And it feels like the dancing just comes straight from the heart. And the intention of a lot of it is that it doesn't feel like choreography. It feels like these people are just dancing. So some of it is not quite uniform, and it doesn't matter if everyone looks exactly the same because it's just dancing. And it just brings the joy, and I get to watch some of it and I get to be in some of it. It's just beautiful.
Well, it's very clear that that love that you felt for Fiddler when you were researching it as a student is still there, because you were effervescent when you talk about this show, which is awesome. So you talked about watching some of the show and being in some of the show. I would ask you, what's your favorite part of the show to watch, and what's your favorite part of the show to be in?
Ooh, I think my favorite part to watch is probably To Life, because yeah, it is just, it's just an explosion of joy. And wow, our dancers are so talented. And just everyone is so invested in the moment. And I love hearing every night's a little bit different. People have their own little ad libs that they throw in. And different times they decide to say different things. So it's really fun to sometimes hear a little bit of a difference in what people decide to say that night. My favorite part of the show to begin. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No. I was going to say yes. And then what's your favorite part to be in?
I think it has to be Matchmaker. I love getting to connect with Seitel and Hodel. They're both such amazing actresses, and we just play with each other. And every night's a little bit different with that too. One of us will say something just a little bit differently, and then the whole thing kind of has a different spin on it. There's just so much fun to be had in our connections with each other and our love as a family.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's a very fresh production, not only because of Bartlett Sher's direction, but also because of these little, the way you and your castmates rather play off each other and tinker around with things so that it stays fresh and fun, so that every night's a different look, no matter when you see the show.
I suppose so. Yeah, within our the beautiful framework that we have established, I think we do find some spontaneity, and I think that helps us keep it fresh for us and for our audiences too.
Well, you mentioned Ukraine, and so I want to take that moment just, as a point of information. The stories that Fiddler on the Roof is based on were written by a Yiddish writer in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were written as a serial story. So in other words, one published in a newspaper this week, and the next, and the next, and the next, and so on over a couple of decades. And he was actually, his name was Sholem Aleichem, and he was born in what is now Ukraine. So I thought that was very timely that these stories came out of that region, and like you said, are still very relevant in light of what's happening in the world today. But I also wanted to comment that the writer or the lyricist, Sheldon Harnick, said, we weren't trying to make a Jewish story. We were simply trying to tell the story of people who happen to be Jewish, which I think lends itself to the universality of the piece. Would you agree with that, Yarden?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, there's something for everyone in Fiddler on the Roof. I want to pivot a little bit away from Fiddler and introduce our Peace Center audience, many of them have been with us for the past 10 seasons since we've started doing these. But I want to introduce them to something they may not be familiar with that I think you have been a part of in the past, which is the Songbook. Is it Songbook Foundation? Songbook Academy. Songbook Academy. And I know, I know that you are a graduate of the Songbook Academy. And as we have musical theater lovers here watching, I would love for you to tell them about what that is and what its mission is, and maybe a little bit about what it's like to take part in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I went to the Great American Songbook Academy when I think I had just graduated high school, or maybe it was the year before my senior year, one of those. I don't fully remember. Um, but it's in Carmel, Indiana, and that's where the foundation is located. I believe it's called the Great American Songbook Foundation. I hope I'm remembering that correctly.
I think you're correct. I think that is it.
Yes. It was an amazing experience. As a musical theater person, I got to experience so much more of the canon of
Right.
the songbook, the Great American Songbook. There's so much more than just musical theater, of classic music. And their mission is really, I think, really amazing, to preserve and to bring back and keep the music alive. And they have such an amazing team there. And yeah, it was amazing to learn from them and to connect with other young people who were there with me. I'm still friends with many of them. And
Well, in fact, did I see that another alum is part of this tour as well?
oh,
Or
really?
has been in the
Not to
past?
my knowledge.
Well, I thought so. I thought I read that Isabel, I forget her last name, but she was a songbook grad. Is there an Isabel in the cast?
Is one of my sisters, Isabel
Well,
Robbins, and I will have to ask her about
you
it
guys
today.
need to talk about that because you're both graduates of the Songbook Academy, I
Oh
believe.
my gosh, we must have gone different years.
Yeah, yeah. So this is an organization that I absolutely love as a historian of theater, and particularly musical theater. It was founded by, or at least definitely championed by Michael Feinstein, who is a pianist and singer who really has a love for the Great American Songbook, so much of which came from American musical theater, from film music of the early part of the 20th century or middle part of the 20th century. So what he's done is create this organization that trains young voices like Yarden's and Isabel's, also in the cast, to remember this music from a time gone by. And certainly Fiddler would fit perfectly into that canon of musical theater, as you mentioned. Well, listen, Yarden, it has been wonderful to have you with us. I appreciate so much you sharing your input about the show, and definitely the joy that you feel from the show comes through in talking with you about it. So thank you. I wonder if there's one last thing you would like to share with our audience about Fiddler, something you love, something you hope that they'll look out for when they see the show. Any last parting comments about the show?
Oh, I guess I'll say, well, I'm really excited for everyone to see it. Our audiences have been absolutely amazing. And I guess the thing that I want to say is allow yourself to be moved and to feel and to go along with the story that we want to tell, because we love it when you come along on the ride. And I think it really just creates our own world in that theater.
Thanks so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Yarden Barr with Fiddler on the Roof. If you want to know more about the show or you want to purchase tickets, visit www.peacecenter.org. Thanks for joining us.